thank you in the audience for being here. Am I? I wasn't talking into it. No, am I? This somehow seems unhygienic to talk right at the microphone, but okay. We're happy to have you all here tonight. I am looking forward, and I know you are looking forward to an excellent and lively discussion. I want to say a word or two about the League of Women Voters. I'm going to do that by reading our mission statement. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. So one of our major goals is to be well informed about issues. And that's the reason that we're here tonight, to become better informed about the criminal justice reform law that was passed in 2015 and has just gone into effect October 1st of 2015. It's a timely and critical issue right now as the legislature is addressing it, looking at what it needs to do in order to tweak it, or whatever else they have in mind to do with it. We want to know as much as possible and to be ready to influence with our advocacy what is happening at the legislature. So this is a particularly pertinent and timely topic tonight. We'll begin our discussion tonight with Ron Gordon, who can give us the background of this rather amazing law that the Utah State Legislature passed last year, telling us how it came to be passed and what it intends to do. And then we'll be moving on to the rest of our panel members who each participate in a different way in the criminal justice system. We have Sheriff Ben Tracy. I was thinking as I put this, was thinking about the order that we would have our speakers in. We're kind of looking at the order that the offender comes into contact with the criminal justice system.
This is the offender.
So we have Sheriff Tracy representing the arresting officer. We have County Attorney Mark Thomas representing the prosecutor. We have Kent Hart representing the defending attorney. And unfortunately, Jerry Miller-Fox, who was going to be representing the probation officer, is not able to join us tonight. We will be asking our three panel members what changes are in process in your office as a result of this law. What things are you encouraged about so far? What are the drawbacks or frustrations or concerns that you have with the law? And what needs to be done at the legislature to make the law more successful? And how can we as citizens influence what happens? I will give the background biography of each speaker as he speaks rather than all at once, so that you can connect the biography with the person. We're going to ask you to hold your comments to about 10 minutes. I know that's a ridiculously short time. I'm sure you have much more to say about how this law is impacting your office than you can put into 10 minutes. But we do want to get an overview from everybody. We do have a timer who will be holding up cards at the end of, well, we have 2 minutes left and 1 minute left in time. Okay. We will have a question and answer period after our presentations. There are cards, I think, that have been passed around to everybody who is looking for them. If you want a card, if you think of a question, you want a card, raise your hand, and one of our people will distribute one to you. Go ahead and write out questions as people are talking. If you want to address them to a particular panelist, feel free to do that. Just use their name and ask that person your question. One of our leaders will collect, if you just hold the card up when you have a ring, one of our leaders will collect it from you. We'll go to Lola over here, who will review them mainly for duplications, and then we'll be asking our panelists the questions. So, let's get going. Ron Gordon. Ron Gordon is the Executive Director of the Utah Commission on Criminal and Juvenile Justice. In that capacity, he oversees a 21-member commission charged with studying, developing, and implementing criminal and juvenile justice policy throughout Utah. He recently led the efforts in Utah to pass the comprehensive research-based criminal justice reform and is currently overseeing the implementation of those reforms. He is also the criminal justice policy advisor to Governor Herbert. Right. You want to talk into the other side?
This will be my side. Thank you.
It's a real pleasure to be here today and talk about how this came into being and where we go from here. So I'll give you a little bit of background to start. In the fall of 2013, I started having some conversations with the governor about criminal justice policy in general, and particularly about the need to reduce. Is it better if I just talk really loudly? About the need to reduce recidivism, and by that I mean the cycle of offending, repeat offending. In January of 2014, the governor said in the State of the State address that he was calling for a comprehensive review of criminal justice policies to end the cycle of recidivism. He said the exit doors from prison ought not to be a revolving door. This was the first time in my memory that a governor has talked about criminal justice policy in a State of the State address, other than just saying we need to simply lock people up. We have found over the years that that's not always been a particularly productive approach. So after the State of the State address, I've been joking that the governor came to me and he said, "Hey Ron, you know that when I said we're going to study this criminal justice laws, you know I meant you are going to study, right?" So I have a 21-person commission that is designed just for this thing. And Sheriff Tracy has actually been a voting member of that commission for a number of years. We partnered with the Pew Charitable Trust to do a deep data dive in the state of Utah. So they looked at data that came strictly from the state of Utah. It was sentencing data from our courts and length of stay data from our Department of Corrections. And the idea was to get a feel for trends that had been developing over the past 10 years. And then we could ask ourselves, are we happy with these trends? If so, that's great. If not, what do we do about them? We found that a couple of very interesting things. We found that crime overall had been decreasing. That's a nationwide trend over the past 10 years. We found that length of stay in our prison had been going up for all offenders. That was not a decision that we had made. We never said we think length of stay has to go up for all offenders. So that was very interesting to find that. We also found that 2/3 of the people who are admitted to our prison are there because they failed on probation or parole. Only 1/3 are being admitted straight from the courts. This is fairly alarming because these are individuals who at one time, either a judge or the Board of Pardons said, "We think you're now safe to be out in the community," and something was happening that they were failing and being returned. That looked like an opportunity to make some really significant improvements. If we can improve our success rate on probation and parole, then we automatically decrease recidivism. We decreased the prison population also, though I have to tell you that was not ever the starting point.
because that's a really easy thing to do. If we had simply wanted to decrease the prison population, we would have just opened the doors and let people out. That was never our goal. Our goal was to reduce recidivism, reduce crime, and increase public safety. So we knew that supervision on probation and parole was really a key. We also know from research that when we put somebody who is evaluated as a lower risk offender, meaning they're at a lower risk to reoffend than somebody else, when we put them in prison, their risk level goes up. Unfortunately, they don't rub off on the higher risk offenders. It always goes the other way. The higher risk offenders rub off on the lower risk offenders. We also know from research that treatment programs such as substance use disorder treatment and mental health treatment are most effective in the community. They can be effective in prison as well, but they're not nearly as effective in prison as they are in the community, because frankly it's an artificial environment in prison. And it's a lot harder to put into practice the principles that one is learning in those treatment programs when they are incarcerated. Now I'll pause here to say we know and always have known that there will always be a need for jails and prisons. There are some people who just cannot be among the rest of us. They are dangerous to society. They will be incarcerated. We also know that at some point, some people, even if not dangerous, will be locked up just because they don't get it. And that's a part of this as well. Punishment and separation from community, those are valid purposes of sentencing, of criminal justice. And so that's part of it. The idea behind justice reinvestment, behind this criminal justice